Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we have a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Diana Driscoll, and she's an authority on the autonomic nervous system. She's an optometrist and a world-renowned expert on POTS. And if you don't know what that is, it's postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and and other invisible illnesses. And I happen to know some people that are dealing with POTS. I don't know a lot about it. I'm looking forward to hearing about it. But she's also an author, a speaker, an inventor, a devoted researcher with 5 patents to date, and she continues to push forward with dramatic shifts in the evaluation and treatment of these conditions. That's a pretty strong lead in. Diana, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here.
Well, so as always, I like to find out, what brings a guest here. And it sounds like you have had a personal battle with POTS. And I only recently, a couple of years ago, became even aware of the condition, but I now know a couple of people that suffer from it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, well, it's gaining more notoriety, if you will, because so many patients with COVID have ended up with POTS, about 10 to 14%. So you're probably hearing of it more often.
Hmm.
But as you stated, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome means that when a patient goes from laying down to being vertical, their heart starts to race. But unfortunately, that kind of intimates that it's a heart problem.
Right.
And POTS is not a heart problem. The
Wow.
heart is reacting to something. And a real diagnosis would be whatever is driving that fast heart rate. And whatever's driving that also causes a lot of other damage. So patients end up with, oh, so many symptoms. I had at one point in my journey 80 symptoms, and I had a
Oh,
list on my computer, and I would get on the computer and change them every time I went to a doctor. It was like chasing a moving target. The
wow.
dominoes just kept falling, and ultimately it affected every system of the body. And I had to start figuring it out because no one could help. I was completely disabled by this. And then my kids got sick later from just regular viruses. I can't blame the virus.
Right.
My son was bedridden. He missed 3 years of school.
Whoa.
No one had any ideas of what was happening. We were in clinical trials for years, and their conclusion was, well, we think POTS patients are just more aware of their own body. Um,
Whoa.
you've got to be kidding, right?
That sounds like fibromyalgia for a while.
Yes, absolutely. Chronic fatigue syndrome,
Right, right.
fibromyalgia. There's invisible illnesses. The patients don't get any validation, Joe. I thought, well, I'll get some sort of help because I'm a doctor. I'm almost
Right.
50 years old. I got sick from a virus. They're not recognizing what's happening because I'm not getting to the right doctor. Right.
Wow.
It isn't some subtle illness I could just push through. I couldn't do it. And that wasn't the case. I probably went to 50 doctors and they couldn't figure it out. So I was forced into becoming a researcher. And I
Wow.
thought, well, here I am in the body of a patient. I have children affected. Both of my kids are sick. I'm an eye doctor. Maybe I am in position to get some answers for us. And ultimately, that's where some of those patents came from. Figured things out and then figured out my kids. And then we thought, what else could bring people to this endpoint to cause POTS? How can we help others? And this week actually is POTS Care's 10-year anniversary, and
Wow.
patients peel this back. So it was not something I'd wish upon anyone, not a journey I
No.
would want to repeat. But it ended up with a good ending.
So what have you found? I mean, what is this, a genetic um mutation? Is it's a
Yeah.
reaction to
I'm so
another?
glad you asked.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
I'm glad you asked that, Judy. Yes.
Well, I'm
Because
I'm
when I was
solving
sick,
a cancer problem right now, and I've learned a lot about cancer, and it's not what
oh,
anybody thinks it is. There's all these different causes, all these different issues, and there's not a
yeah.
cookie cutter answer to any of this. And that's why I'm kind of curious about this one.
Amazing, isn't it? Right. Well, doctors like to label something and treat according to a label,
All right,
right?
standard of care,
Uh,
right?
yeah, and I've been there. You have 8 minutes with the patient, you have to move things along. Their job is not really to dig into, your genetics or whatever to try
Right.
to piece together those things. So I understand that pressure of seeing patients. I have been there. But
Sure.
in my case, we had to. We didn't have a choice.
Right.
But the first thing I did when I was put into the position, and I had been sick, gosh, 3.5 years at that point.
Wow.
I set up genetic disease investigators because I was thinking, like you, what are the chances I could develop POTS? My kids could develop POTS. My
Right.
husband at the time was fine, and there's no genetic component. I thought there's got to be something.
Sure, sure.
And along the journey, I was told I was hypermobile, I was stretchy, my connective tissue was abnormal. And they said it's a genetic disorder of collagen. Uh, okay, where are the genes for that? And they go, oh, we don't know.
Of
Okay,
course.
we're missing too much here.
Right.
I have a feeling it goes deeper than this.
Uh,
So POTS is not a disease, right? It's a presentation. It's like saying you have a fever. Um, you can't say there's genes responsible for a fever. That just doesn't make any
right.
sense. So it's not like there's POTS genes, but there's certain genes that set
Like
us
a
up.
symptom.
Well, that set us up for the propensity to it. And in the patients we see, the vast majority are inflammatory patients. And it's what we call subclinical, meaning CRP and sed rate, what doctors usually use to measure inflammation,
Mhm.
is usually normal. So you have to go deeper than that. Those are still inflammatory patients, but the inflammation is causing those dominoes to fall. And you want to know where's the source of the inflammation and what dominoes have fallen. So it was, gosh, 12 years ago. I put out the Driscoll theory, and I'm happy to share that with your listeners,
Absolutely.
that revealed some of these layers that were common among patients. And one of them was a propensity to develop high intracranial pressure. And it escaped diagnosis usually because it didn't display as typical. We didn't get the typical signs of like swollen optic nerves, or in the MRI, the brain MRIs, they usually looked basically normal. So doctors will miss that. We can't afford to miss that. And then inflammation commonly blocks a neurotransmitter that affects the parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest system. So when that happens, then the patient's digestion becomes abnormal, like my gallbladder completely shut down. Move it. Said, I want to think about this because I have a feeling the organ itself sounds healthy. Maybe I can save this. And indeed I could. The pancreas, stomach acid, importantly, motility of the stool. So patients end up with constipation, usually punctuated with diarrhea, and can go into full-blown gastroparesis where just nothing is moving. And then that causes other issues. I got to the point, Joe, the malabsorption of nutrients was so significant, I was hallucinating.
Whoa.
And no one ever considered the possibility I was malabsorbing. I wasn't an alcoholic. I didn't have celiac disease, or Crohn's or something. My son developed severe osteoporosis.
Whoa.
He broke his arm throwing a ball, putting on a coat. He was eating, but he wasn't absorbing those nutrients. I was able to figure that out. Then I just sat down and thought, it'd be great to get those nerves working again, replace the neurotransmitter I was missing in the brain, and restore that rest and digest system. So
That
I was,
sounds like a big task.
well, it was at the time, but I thought, what else do I have to do? Right? I was 100% focused on this. And I was always been just a real geek. I loved organic chemistry. My father was a chemistry professor. So I sat down with what I learned about genetics, what I knew about chemistry, and tried to put together using existing supplements something that would replace this neurotransmitter. It would correct for any genetic defects along the pathway of making that neurotransmitter. It needed to cross the blood-brain barrier to support cognition. And importantly, I wanted to see a bowel movement, because if we saw a bowel movement, we knew that the nerve was getting triggered, right? And that's your anti-inflammatory nerve. So it was quite the journey, but I'm very proud of it. And I remember sitting in my kitchen just putting this together for my kids and I. I had no intention of ever releasing it. But
Nice.
the reason I did was I developed pancreatitis once in the hospital, secondary to an antibiotic that ignited the inflammation. And I remember thinking, is there any chance that Parasin Plus, the supplement mix now, could restore my pancreas? I mean, it'll assist the vagus nerve, which is the anti-inflammatory nerve. The pancreas is under innervation of the vagus nerve. And in about 2 to 3 days, things started to improve. And
Wow.
voila. And that's when I thought I should probably release this to others.
Wow.
Started to get into that. So one key too that I'm also very proud of, because I'm an eye doctor, and
Right.
eye doctors don't usually get into the autonomic nervous system. No doctors do,
Not any
honestly.
reason to,
Nobody
really.
likes it. You know?
Right.
It's invisible, it's hard to understand. We don't have good ways of measuring it, and doctors just don't like it. But when I was
It's
working
pretty
on,
darn necessary.
yeah, it is. And usually it works all by itself, right? So
Right. Right.
you don't have to fiddle with it. But when it breaks, it's really bad.
Yeah.
But the patients we see with POTS, and it's across the board, they tend to have fairly large pupils, and that's an imbalance of that autonomic nervous system. And I thought, if I hit these nerves correctly, the pupils should normalize. They should get a little bit smaller. And indeed, that happened. So I knew we were doing more than just the vagus nerve. And tear production increased. So it was great to be able to release that also for these chronic dry eye patients who don't feel all that well, to help them with that. So I was pretty proud. It came full circle,
Right.
eye doctor getting sick, not able to work for over 10 years,
Right.
back to I could give something back to the profession.
Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters, and for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So tell me about this product.
Yeah.
What's it all about? I mean, is it is
Mhm.
it herbs? Is it minerals? Is it what's it made out of?
Yeah. It's an over-the-counter supplement.
Okay.
So it's a blend of everything's already deemed safe by the FDA. And that was really important to me. And I also didn't want to have to come up with a new drug, right? Because what kind of trillions of dollars, does that take?
Right.
I couldn't wait 10 or 15 years for that. And I knew my kids couldn't wait. Patients can't wait for that. But when we know the mechanism of action of
Mhm.
things and we have a goal, it's a problem to be solved.
Right.
And so combination of those ingredients, looking for that nerve to trigger with the bowel movement, looking for the pupils to get smaller. And then I had to make sure that patients didn't adapt to it, where the receptors receive these chemicals And then they start to shut down because they have plenty of that chemical that can happen. And then
Right.
the patient needs more and more of it, and that's not good. So it was about 3 years of putting all that together. And I'm happy to say it's changed many lives and continues to do so. It's called Parasym Plus for parasympathetic nervous system plus crosses the blood-brain barrier for cognition. And I say cognition, like good thinking or no brain fog. I got to the point, not only did I feel like I was demented, but I couldn't stay awake. What first started in my illness was severe insomnia. I was awake for days, even with drugs. Um, Morphed into I was awake maybe an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in the evening, and I was struggling to stay awake then. And I had a wonderful neurologist, and he said, "This sounds neurodegenerative. This is what we see." I said, "Well, we just get worse and we just stop waking up. What the heck?"
Right.
Parasym Plus, I need it because I could stay awake. It was amazing to see. So the brain support was significant too. So Parasym Plus.
Excellent. Excellent. And where can somebody find this? I am dealing with what they call chemo fog, and
Oh,
I'm in the end game of solving a very difficult cancer right now, and I've
sure.
gone down a road that's solving it, but there's a
Yes.
price you got to pay with your cognition and your memory and all this stuff that is temporary, but
Yes.
I'm looking to clear it out quick as I can.
The patients we see will sometimes feel cognition improve 20 minutes after taking it
Nice.
because it does quickly cross the blood-brain barrier. The more brain fog or exhaustion we see, and we'll see patients, just kind of barely holding it together,
Hmm.
and it goes into the bloodstream, and you can see them perk up, and the sparkle comes back into the eyes. So the more affected the patient, the more dramatic you can see that response.
Sure.
That's usually the first thing we see. The second is the bowel movement. So
Okay.
we recommend patients take it first thing in the morning, wait 45 minutes or so before eating, or as soon as they have a bowel movement, it's fair
Okay.
game. But in any form of cognitive decline or struggles, we want to support this neurotransmitter,
Sure.
acetylcholine. Any form of dementia, that's the first thing that's done. So I'm very proactive in my health now, brain health certainly, because now my body's fine.
Right.
I don't want to have old age again. I already went through that.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah. So anything I can do to support it, I do. And I think I'm the most active person I know of. Brain's working great.
That's
Uh,
great.
so I would encourage certainly anyone dealing with brain fog to support that neurotransmitter and don't lose hope because the neurons reattach. It's amazing. I had nothing. I was working with nothing for a while. And it took time. I would see numbers like a phone number and I couldn't remember them. Practice it and make sure I could write it down and then
Sure.
start reading easy novels where it was like one or two characters, see if I could follow it. And it all did come back. But the brain is fairly plastic.
It's
Um,
very amazing. I've had a couple of brain injuries that somehow I'm still out here talking and being somewhat reasonable.
there you go. There you go. Well, I actually had brain lesions
Oh
and we
no.
could see them on the MRI. That was scary.
Yeah.
And I encourage everyone to not ever lose hope in seeing something objective like that and thinking there's no way around that then. Oh, that's it for me.
Oh,
Because
I couldn't agree
that's
more.
not true. Yeah, it's amazing what we can overcome. And you had asked where Parasym Plus is. That's on
Okay.
vegusnervesupport.com, or the company's called TJ Nutrition, and TJ was named after my kids.
Nice.
And James. Well, it's kind of a family thing, that's where it started.
Love
And
it.
um, yeah, it's
We'll make
where
sure
it
that
stays.
gets into the show notes for people.
I appreciate that. Again, I'm really excited about how that can change lives. And we just look for the patterns of low acetylcholine release. And that's the only way to figure it out. There is no blood test for this, right? Because the body breaks it down immediately. So we talked about brain fog. We can get light sensitive. Pupils can get big. We get sluggish digestion, lean toward constipation, perhaps. We see more fatigue, mental fatigue and physical fatigue. And oftentimes patients, they don't have to have POTS for this. They just have some sort of chronic inflammatory condition like aging, for example, is one of
Right.
them, inflammaging.
Happens to
And
everybody, yeah.
yeah, but they'll say, oh, I said it's stress, or I'm just not eating right, or whatever. I think, I don't think that's it. And I think if we stay on top of the inflammaging, we won't necessarily have to deal with a lot of these old age illnesses. The tendency for dementia, for example, or vascular endothelial problems, that sort of thing. So there's so much more we can do to be proactive. And had I not gone through POTS and that horror, I wouldn't be thinking in those terms.
Right, right.
I think now I'm probably healthier because of that journey. Yeah.
Seems that inflammation has now been widely recognized as a major, I don't know, monster out there that's behind every problem that is physiologically attacking us. And so,
Yeah.
but there's also so many causes for it and so many ways to approach it. So this is one that I hadn't really heard of before.
Yeah.
With POTS, has there been development, like, I mean, from, let's say, when this was happening to you and you
Mhm.
were going to all these doctors and nobody knew anything, is there now better ways to recognize this condition?
Yes, but it's not always advantageous, unfortunately. So to recognize POTS, you have the patient stand up. And then it becomes pretty obvious, heart starts racing. The problem with that is when the patients get that diagnosis, the traditional treatment for POTS is purely to try to cover up symptoms. So we've been waving this flag for over 10 years of instead, we need to locate and treat the underlying problems and those dominoes that have fallen. And POTS is not a good label. POTS is, again, just the presentation. So it's my mission to change the labels where it's more labeling the underlying problem, be it the inflammatory problem, whatever that is,
Sure.
preferably with a genetic tendency for it. And then we can measure things in the blood and say, there it is. And this is our treatment. And then let's be real aware of this so you don't get sick again. And POTS will be seen just like I said, a fever is seen, where it's just one sign of an underlying problem.
So you're actually
So
going to a source, not just the outward symptom.
that's exactly right. Because sadly, Joe, a lot of what doctors do
Rare.
traditionally to try to cover the symptoms makes patients worse. It certainly did
Agreed.
me.
Agreed.
So,
That's a lot of what this
yeah, which is
podcast is
more than,
about, is finding real answers and not just cover-ups. And it's not to make modern medicine sinister or anything. It's just
yeah.
the road that it takes so many times, and treating a problem rather than solving a problem. And
Yes.
there's a big difference.
No, absolutely. And I was in a good position to get answers, I will admit, even though it took 10 years,
Yeah.
Um, And if a big institution like an academic institution is so clunky, they
Right.
have to spend years raising money for a trial, and the trial may or may not be successful. And there were so many layers to this, so many aspects. So an independent researcher can move fast, right?
Right.
And I was able to do that. So it did help a lot. Yeah.
Well, we're getting a little low on time, but I did want to hear about these patents of yours.
Yeah.
And also, just so you know, this is an offer I make to most of my guests. We have a lot more we could talk about, and I would certainly want to welcome you back to go deep into any of these topics. But
Yeah.
you've just got such a gigantic body of work. I'm just curious about these patents that you've acquired.
Well, thank you for that, Joe. And I'd love to come back and
Yeah.
I can. till the cows come home.
I love it.
When I figured out what was going on with this nerve and how I worked through the problem and ultimately restored that neurology, I thought, I think this is new science. I don't think anybody's ever tried to do this before. And so, not knowing how difficult it was to get a patent, certainly one involving supplements, that's not something that's done. I just sat down and read about patents and decided I was going to write one.
All right.
Wrote it, ignorance is bliss. So
Yeah.
I went to a patent attorney and got it. And then, so that was basically what Parasym Plus was about. And I was looking at everything. I threw everything into this patent, considering like connective tissue disorders, or what I was told was Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, the autonomic nervous system, chronic inflammation, just threw all kinds of things in there. And then kind of evolved into more of the dry eye component, wrote patents for that. No one had ever figured out that the vagus nerve that controls inflammation, every aspect of digestion, that rest or digest system, the receptors for that nerve are what we call nicotinic. But no one had ever figured out a way to stimulate both the nicotinic receptors and different receptor, muscarinic. And the muscarinic receptors are in the pupil. So when I saw the pupils get smaller, I knew it was big news.
Nice.
And it was something in our dry eye patients as an eye doctor, we never looked at that. We never looked at how large our pupils were. We knew they were light sensitive and we assumed it was from the cornea drying out, but we look at the cornea, it doesn't look that dry. And everything started to click. Chronic dry eye patients tend to be depressed. They tend to have sluggish digestion or brain fog or whatever. It was almost like looking at a POTS patient and turning it way down.
Okay.
So to be able to give answers for those people too, that was more of the patents do. Yeah.
Well, I like the way you think, and I love problem solvers. I'm a formulator and a problem solver, and I think we probably have a lot in common with that.
I
You
think you're right.
got a lot more degrees than I do, but I I live my life and find my answers. So I'm
Yeah.
really impressed, and I respect very much your journey. I think when people find a problem and they go after it rather than just flopping in the wind, going, "Well, I'm a victim. I'm stuck. I'm this. I'm that."
Yeah.
That's inspiring, and it's what we need. And so I thank you for being part of the solution.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You're very kind. And I appreciate you for helping us get word out. I'm just one voice,
I
but
hear you. That's what this is
multiply
all
that.
about. Well, why
That's
don't you give us your parting shot and how people can get a hold of you or find out your products, your information, anything that you want to share?
Yes, I'm at potscare.com. And the supplements that are patented are vagusnervesupport.com. The POTS groups that we have that's going against that traditional treatment that's making patients worse, we call them POTS rebels, and I have a Patreon account for that. And I'll meet with people, we talk about things, offer support, and share this information because I really want to stop certainly how POTS, but a lot of these invisible illnesses
Sure.
are being judged. Patients are not getting validated for an extraordinarily high level of suffering, and that needs to change. So,
I
yeah.
love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much again, and we look forward to having you back. This has been another edition of the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and we thank all of our listeners, and we will see you next time.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.